match, the championship moves to the technical challenge of the Hungaroring. This tight and twisty circuit is a real test of skill, demanding precision, patience, and bravery in wheel-to-wheel battles. Joining us in the studio tonight with cameras is Ash Bibby, and alongside me will be once again Joseph Black, plus a huge welcome to all of our live stewards, keeping a close eye on the action to ensure fair and competitive racing. And Joseph, we're straight into the thick of it, halfway through qualifying already. Andy Boardman and Will Stevenson still duking it out at the top, with Marco Badowski looming in the background.
Yeah, and what a way to be right into the action as, Badowski only a tenth off of Boardman, so we could be seeing different contenders scrapping it out here for pole position and for the top few positions maybe in the race. It's a good start with 7 drivers within a second of that first, of that 52 set by Stevenson, that first provisional pole lap, and should be in for a good battle for pole and then a good race to follow it.
Yeah, of course, Marco Badowski, didn't see him last week, so again, bit of a dark horse coming into this round. We'll have to keep our eyes on him. Christian Lindgren on your screen at the moment, a very accomplished Ginetta driver in his own right within RCI. He's currently on a good lap coming towards the line for the Sim Brothers number 33 car, currently down in P5, crosses the line. It's an improvement, but not good enough to jump up the order just yet. And he looms just on that third row of the grid, P5. Ted Ayres just ahead of him. Again, a very good Ginetta driver in their own right. They were saying earlier on in the Ginetta chat that they enjoy Hungaroring. It's one of their kind of more favourite combos of Ginetta and Hungaroring. Makes for a good match, and certainly well rehearsed, being able to take it nearly to Marco Badowski and Andy Boardman. But Will Stevenson still at the top, 52.852 is the benchmark to beat. Boardman, of course, just behind on that front row of the grid. And I think if Brands Hatch is anything to go by, Joseph, it's going to be a Boardman and Stevenson show. But with Badowski thrown in the mix, this could be a 3-horse race today.
Well, yeah, and it's we've got a different circuit, and so different drivers, of course, in an equal car championship, different drivers will try to rise to the fore, as we just have. We could have somebody different coming up to the top, somebody who particularly favours the Hungaroring. We were talking a minute ago about that, but we're watching Ted Edwards P7. This is just how tight the grid is. We've got just under 2 seconds between the top 20. So a good start here. And with only a couple of runs to go, only 3 minutes 45 left on the clock, I think we could be set for anybody, really, to take this pole position. It's a very open grid at the moment.
Yeah, super open grid indeed. I mean, 2 seconds covering about 21 cars. It sounds like a kind of large-ish margin in the grand scheme of things, but that's only going to be a small mistake from one of the drivers ahead, and you're soon going to find yourself being passed by the train behind. Typically, in the one-make series, we do see a lot of pack racing, a lot of trains forming. One driver at the head, a big queue of drivers behind, a mistake happens, positions switch around, gaps open up, and back to the same thing we go once again. And it's just one of those things that naturally comes from the pack racing here at the Hungaroring. It should be a very good circuit for just that. Not too many passing places here. Down into turn 1 is normally a pretty popular place to get a move done, providing you get the run out of turn 14. You've then maybe got the brave move coming out of 4 into 5 at the top of the hill. It's relatively single file through the rest of the lap before down to the likes of turn 12, 13 and 14, which becomes a bit of a switchback nature where the outside becomes and so forth, until somebody finally prevails in the fight, and then we get back underway once again. Still Will Stevenson at the top of the field, a brief yellow flag being shown. He's back in the pit lane, probably for some fresh tyres and a little bit less fuel once again, to see if he can get that car to go any quicker over the next lap or so. And it's quite a popular strat here, although No tire blankets on the Ginettas. It does tend to take a little while to get these tires into their optimum pace. I mean, from practice, I ran a few laps earlier on in the week, about 3 laps or so before they really come into their own, kind of right where the pressures rise up. The temperatures kind of level off and you get that nice stable ground. But under 2 minutes to go on the qualifying, will it be enough time to do that strategy? Will Stevenson still in the pit lane, a minute and a half on the clock, Joe? I think he's confident that he's secured the pole at this stage.
I think indeed he is, and well, he's not really got much option now. He's opted to go into the pits. That is it, you would think, for this session, and it's going to be a very tight battle for this pole and also for the race. You mentioned the multiple packs and the limited braking zones. It means that we could be seeing some more gambled moves, which it'll throw something else into the mixer with. Of course, Brands having a few more obvious overtaking spots as we are looking at the action now. Badowski goes up into that second place and takes that front row start off of Boardman for the moment.
Yeah, Badowski to the front, but Boardman is on circuit at the moment. And if I know Andy, he's not going to take that one line down. He's going to be going all the way until the end as he navigates through what is the middle sector at the moment, coming through turns 8 and 9. A quick kind of dab of the brakes through a lot of these corners just to shift the weight forward in that car to get it pitched in. Out of 11, looked very wide indeed, but down into 12, long braking zone, gets it in nice and tight over the curb, straightens the steering out, jumps on the power to try and maximize the corner exit towards turn 13. Feels like it goes on forever before you see the exit curve, and then not forgetting, of course, turn 14, an even longer corner, dab of the brakes, down a gear, lots of lock to get it pointed into the pit wall, and then choose your throttle position carefully. Too early, you go wide, and too late, you lose a lot of momentum, and to the line he goes. Andy Boardman, the checkered flag is out, and it's P4 for the Greased Weasel racing car. Not enough to beat Badowski, who's putting a late time towards the top of the border, 52.6. Raphael Huell out of nowhere, just behind with a 52.7. And Will Stevenson, of course, with his 52.8. Boardman 0.2 of a second off, Lindgren 0.3 off, and then a big gap back to Ted Ers in P6. So in the late stages of this qualifying, Joseph, it's all flipped on its head. Badowski to the top, Raphael Huell, remember his run in the Porsche Carrera Cup. He's not too kind of a stranger essentially to these one-make series, so keep your eye on the German driver as well. Fresh off of Saturday, where you might remember, Joseph, 6 hours solo at Sebring, Raphael Huell put in during the RSS Endurance Series.
Indeed, and well, I think I wouldn't be surprised if he was a little bit fatigued from that still heading into Monday, but no such problems for Raphael Huell, who came from the mid-pack to start on the front row. Will Stevenson's confidence that he had taken that pole position a little bit misguided, and the number 108 will be starting from P3 as we have the last few cars coming up to the line now. Tom Shipston being the final one, he is in P13, but we've got a particularly tight grid here, and we should be in for some good racing. The top 5, the top 6 roughly, can barely be split.
Yeah, some close racing coming at you this evening. Marco Badowski fastest through sector 3. We got Raphael Huell fastest through sector 2. And then we've got to go all the way down to P8. Olivier Curtin takes the fastest first. And something we don't often see all too much here at RCI. It's normally the top 4 duking it out for the sectors. We've also got Will Stevenson and Christian Lindgren running the exact same times, a 152.852. And we've got to get all the way down to P9 before we see the 1 second margin opening up. But still 20-something cars covered by that magical 2 seconds, which is going to be an absolutely small margin when we get into the pack racing. Mistakes begin to happen and track limits begin to be breached as well. And that's going to be a key topic on the drivers' thoughts tonight. Very easy to pick up warnings through the Hungaroring with the generous runoff areas that are given to you through turns 1, 4, especially 5, 6, and 7. The chicanes can also be very awkward. Turn 11 has a lot of exit curb, and turn 12 also the case with turn 14. So got to be very careful on those track limits. And as the B-roll cycles through, it is, of course, the time when we do go through our championship standings, fresh off of last week. Of course, it was Andy Boardman in the number 69 Greased Weasel racing car, picking up 69 points to his name. Will Stevenson just behind him, 61 points, before we have a good jump back to Christian Lindgren with 48 points. 4 points behind him, Raphael Huell, and 4 more points behind them, Lily Armstrong. Tom Shipston, Ted Ayres, Callum Kerrigan, and Les Stevenson all duking it out for just inside the top 10. And Peter Lundqvist in the 999, managing to sneak inside with 25 points to his name. So bit of a battle of the Brits on page 1 as we cycle through the standings. Our very own Kevin Boss, who cooked up this whole championship as your Monday event, 23 points. Neil Pemlott, 2 points behind on 21. Evan Toth on 19. Matthew Malcolm, some fantastic screenshots taken from him in the ACC screenshots channel, within our Discord with 17 points. Malcolm and Redford, but certainly no friends in championship honours. 15 points to Mike Redford. Matthias Byron on 14, Peter Varga on 13, unlucky for some. Ted Edwards on 12 after his excursion during the Brands Hatch round. Rudy Philmolter on 11, and Aidan Lee Howard on 10 sneaks just inside the top 20. And of course, there is no kind of silver and AM standings. Everybody is lumped in together in the pro category. So it's every man for himself, and every position really does matter. Olivier Curtin, Scott Lawson, Aaron Jackson, Ollie Mulder, Miguel Martins, Marco Badowski, Emo Plata, Gianni Lenz, Martin Schaefer, and Arian Leon de Jong yet to score in the championship so far. And there's another page here. John Schultz, the last car yet to score. Everybody else has signed out and will take no further part, including Joe Dorber, which is a bit of a shame after last week's performance. Did rather well at Brands Hatch. 2 minutes of grid time to go. It's normally the time we take a small walk down the field and have a look at all the liveries. Marco Badowski, your pole sitter, left-hand side of your screen. And what a colourful grid it is here today, Joseph. Normally the Ginettas kind of bring out the meme liveries, shall we say, amongst our community.
Yeah, I mean, they're always great to see, and this is certainly a great one to see. The number 33 of Lindgren, a Jurassic Park throw, I believe that would be. And well, you talk about you talk about the fact that they like to have a bit of fun with deliveries. The further down this field we go, I think the more fun that we're going to see in some of these. The number 111, Olivier Curtin, that was quite a nice looking livery. The black and red of Ted Edwards, nice as well. Lundqvist, same livery as Lindgren, and that is confirmation that that is indeed a Jurassic Park throw. But as you mentioned, very, very, very colourful. Quite a few of these cars. The number 28 of Callum Kerrigan, bright pink in contrast to a lot of these mainly blue colours. There's a purple there, quite a few yellows chucked in there. That Roker Poker of well, we don't talk about Les Stevenson, and we shall move on before too long, and before any of the live stream moderators get to that. Looking further down now, as we get to the rear of the field, there's another pink car there, but that is the 95, I believe that to be, and that is a very nice livery as well. It says something on the top. I couldn't quite read that. It's that it was the 95. It was Redford. Nice livery, that one. Going further back, right to the rear of the field, we've got a weird contrast of blue and yellow to round us off, but some nice looking liveries, and the session is about to get underway.
Yeah, very colourful field indeed with the Ginettas, and the cars are about to roll around on their formation lap. It's a crucial one with the GT4 cars within ACC. No tyre blankets to bring those Pirellis into some form of warm window, shall we say, by the time they get underway. So it's all going to have to be done on the formation lap. We're going to see lots of weaving, lots of brake dragging, and I'm sure all the way till the green flag, some drivers are going to be stood on those brakes trying to radiate some heat from the disc into the rim, which of course goes into the tire and should hopefully bring up those pressures. Probably a few easy laps on the curbs from the get-go. We're going to see people being a little bit cautious, protecting those Pirellis before they come into their magical window. And then we're going to see lots of hopefully curb abuse as we head through turns 6 and 7. It's very easy corners to jump the curbs and of course make for some spectacular viewing. Just as we get around the formation lap, of course, it's a perfect time to tell you what is going on here at RCI. Friday this week continues the LMU Friday Multi-Sprint Series as they head to round 6 in Belgium to take on Spa. Hypercar and GT3 take to the stage on RCI TVs. You can join Jessie Lee and Katrina Scott. And there's still some spaces if you do fancy a late season sign up and you've just got your teeth sunk in to, of course, LMU. Saturday just gone was, of course, the beginning of our RSS Endurance Series. That's over on iRacing. So if you are an iRacer watching along, you want to get involved in that one. Still spaces to go. The next race will be April 12th as they head to Daytona International Speedway. So relatively quiet on the calendar this week. However, new event on the website. Night Owl is coming back, although with a slight change of scenery. We're going to Le Mans Ultimate for Hyper Sprint. We're going to keep the 1 hour format. Final race, of course, being an hour and a half. And yeah, throwing everybody into hypercars. It's going to be for some fast and frantic sprint racing on that one. Down below, you can find all of the RCI links, including Discord, which is the hub of all things RCI, Discord, Twitter, and Instagram, and even Facebook down there as well, where you can find all of the goings on anytime, day or night. And racerci.com is the website. You can find all of our events as well. And down in the bottom left-hand corner, we've of course got our partners revolving round, Ready, Set, Sim, Coach Dave Delta, Green Man Gaming, IMB Racewear, Moser Racing, and of course Motorsport UK Esports. We'll touch on those guys a bit later on as cars are beginning to work round the final 2 corners. We're getting ready to go green here at the Hungaroring for round 2. We've got Marco Badowski on the inside, Raphael Huell alongside Will Stevenson and Andy Boardman and Christian Lindgren lurking behind as well. Bit of a wild card in Ted Urs. Keep your eye on that terrifying I-fronted Ginetta as the green flag drops and we are away. It's a very long run down towards turn 1. Whoever reacts first normally gets the much better line, the chosen side of the road, as it were, into turn 1. We've got Raphael Huell trying to go around the outside of Marco Badowski. Will Stevenson lurking in the background there, pulling up alongside Raphael Huell as we head down into turn 2. We've already got Badowski on the inside, Huell in the middle. Stevenson tries to go around the outside. This will become the inside, although cold tyres, everybody scrabbling for grip as they open up the steering towards turn 3. They'll go side by side, climbing up the hill. Be careful on the opening lap of track limits. Christian Lindgren trying to break through the middle, thinks better of it. A dab of the brakes, drops back as they head towards the top of the hill for turn 5, and already a yellow flag being briefly waved somewhere on the circuit, although very slowly indeed. And Raphael Huell slipping back places now down into P5. Andy Boardman's going to try and have a crack at him as they head through the chicane of turn 6 and 7. Badowski leaping over the curbs already, going defensive into turn 8. Will Stevenson chomping at the back end of the number 45. He is keen to get a move on. He wants to get through Badowski and he wants to break away as they head through the middle sector, the cascading turns of 9, 10 and 11 as they begin to single file down towards turn 12, although Raphael Huell exercising all of the track limits in the background just behind Andy Boardman. And Raphael Huell certainly being the bigger loser off the start. Everybody's beginning to fan out and kind of break away now, and into single file we shall go. Matthew Malcolm though into the pit lane, the number 199. I'm not sure what's happened, whether it's going to get back underway at all on that one. But round the final turn for the first time, it is Marco Badowski leading Will Stevenson, Christian Lindgren, Andy Boardman from Raphael Huell. And that was a very exciting start, but I think Will Stevenson is going to be getting a little bit impatient, not being able to get through Badowski on lap 1 and immediately up the inside into turn number 1. And I think Badowski had gifted him the inside line, and I think Badowski thinking of the longer plan here today, Joseph.
I think indeed he is, and well, there's just a couple of these drivers that are going for those scraps early on. Will Stevenson, of course, getting through into first place. There was almost a 3-wide moment between Badowski, Stevenson and Huell into turn number 3, and that was just a taster of what we could get later on in this race, with Huell now dropping down to P5. He's on the back foot, and so I think he's going to try to fight his way forward. There's now a 8-10 gap between 5th and 6th, which doesn't seem much at the moment, but it can be ever crucial as you're just going to be out of that slipstream. Stevenson with a poor entry to the chicane. Badowski trying to take that exit, but just sitting behind. It wasn't a big enough mistake from Stevenson for Badowski to pounce onto, and they will head now through the second sector with the blue car all over the number 108 in the lead of this race, just waiting for another mistake. We've seen one on this lap, which will have promised Badowski a move and maybe an opportunity to pounce, but not quite yet, as he gets very, very close to the rear of that car in front. And we could be seeing possible contact, possible net coding at least, over the next few laps, as they are identical on pace. But at the moment, Badowski appears to have the advantage in the corners, whereas Stevenson appears to be getting the exits. We're going to head down the main straight, and the number 45 right up close, ready to take that race lead back maybe. He could be looking and shaping up a move. Stevenson defends the inside line. Badowski will take the outside. Who's going to be later on those brakes? It's going to be Stevenson on the correct racing line, who just grips up enough. Lindgren look to the inside of Badowski, so don't forget about him. As further back, Huell and Plate were going side by side through turn 1. And, well, these top few, they're not afraid to get their elbows out. They're not afraid to have a scrap early on in this one, as we look back now to that battle for P5 and to Ted Edwards, who's the latest driver to try to close up to the number 71 in 6th place, but he just maintains that position for now. Once again, another driver waiting for a mistake, and they're all starting to settle in after the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's all aboard the Andy Boardman train almost at the moment. Of course, as he brings Raphael Huell, Emo Plata, Ted Edwards with him. A little gap back to Ted Urs just in the background there, and he brings with him Olivier Curtin and Aaron Jackson. So they're all not very careful during these opening few laps. They start squabbling amongst each other. The train is going to form, and it's going to get very chaotic indeed. Being told in our ears there's some race replays queued up, so although it looked very clean from where we were sat up in the comms box, maybe not so much once we get into the nitty-gritty of it all. Turn 3, this is Olivier Curtin on Ted Urs. There's a bit of a hip and shoulder check. Aaron Jackson tries to split the two, thinks better of it, has to back out of that one. No pass on there coming up the hill. Meanwhile, we had Rudy Philmolter just behind his teammate Les Stevenson. There was a big shove from the car behind. I'm not too sure who that was. Possibly John Schultzer in the number 2. It was Miguel Martins actually in the 62. Just looking back then. We then got more between Rudy Philmolter and the 62 of Miguel Martins. Once again over the grass up the inside. The old hip and shoulder once again through turn 13. And the position has been swapped back around, if I'm not mistaken. Meanwhile, Mike Redford getting involved through turns. This is turn 10, taking a excursion off to the right-hand side before turn 11. That's a very scary place to be in, and we are fully caught up. That was Gianni Lenz for Pixel Racing and Mike Redford coming together through sector 2 there, and they're almost still locked on the circuit. As just behind, we've got Schaefer and Redford. Meanwhile, Varga side by side with Kerrigan towards the top of the hill. Callum's going to be on the inside line, although the inside becomes the outside. It's again the switchback nature. The train is forming. We're too wide, too deep, with Lily Armstrong in the background and John Schultzer battling it out amongst themselves in the purple, brightly coloured cars. Through the chicanes we go, everything beginning to thin out as we head towards the middle part of the lap through the switchback nature of these turns. Now you can see in the background Lily Armstrong is hungry for more positions. They want to make up some ground. Callum Kerrigan at the moment, Joe, cork in the bottle. He is the head of the train right now. One small mistake from Kerrigan, that's going to be 2, 4, 6, maybe even 7 positions lost for the number 28.
Yeah, and they'll all be desperate to get past with a 2.5 second gap now to the driver in front, Lundqvist. But Kerrigan just clinging onto this position for now with Armstrong and Stevenson and Varga as well right behind as they're going to head down the main straight. The slipstream will come in to effect, and then they will come right up to the main braking zone of this circuit, turn number 1. Varga's getting closer. You can see it. It is physical evidence as he pulls to the inside line of turn number 1. Kerrigan tries to give him a squeeze, but he's going to go for it anyway as Varga. It's going to be so close between the two. Varga trying to squeeze Kerrigan out. He's been successful as Kerrigan just runs off of the circuit. In the background, Armstrong and Stevenson are side by side for 15th and 16th. Kerrigan dives to the outside line on Varga. Varga running a little bit wider than the main racing line. He's been able to just squeeze out Callum Kerrigan, and he takes that P13 as Les Stevenson still behind Lily Armstrong, who's going for a move on maybe Callum Kerrigan, or maybe just going to wait behind, just trying to shape up those moves. And Armstrong runs wide through. Stevenson attempts to go. There is contact between the two, and Armstrong holds on to that position, but all getting a little bit feisty.
Yeah, a bit feisty indeed. Paint being traded, elbows out, left, right and centre, as we alluded to earlier on. Of course, the pack racing mentality is coming in. Everybody wants to be at the head of the queue. They want that track position. They want to try and break away from people around them. Of course, Les Stevenson trying to get it underway with Lily Armstrong forcing the move up the inside towards the top of the hill of turn number 5. It just wasn't on. I think the gap was there, but it wasn't there for a pass. It was there because Armstrong had slightly overcooked the corner, and I think Les followed suit as well. Les has to be careful though. John Schultzer behind in the number 2, looking to try and make up more positions as well. But at the front, Will Stevenson breaking away over half a second now between him and Badowski. Just behind though, Lindgren and Boardman are still within arm shot. Raphael Huell, P5, lurking at the background of this train. So again, one mistake at the front of the field here, and it's going to be again 3 or 4 positions lost for whoever. And Badowski within shot of Stevenson. So any small mistake from Will, that's going to be Badowski through. Lindgren will draw himself in to the fight even more, and we know Lindgren very fast in the mid to late stages of these races, and Andy Boardman just aggressive in general once he gets his teeth stuck into someone. So this top 6 all lurking together. They're beginning to break away though, working together quite well, I think, is Badowski with Stevenson. I think Badowski does have the faster car, Joe, although I think Stevenson, he's just going to be driving in his mirrors, isn't he? He's going to be waiting for that kind of move to come from Badowski, and it's not going to come, you know, soon enough. I think this fight's going to be won or lost on the pit lane, because of course we do have that mandatory stop with us tonight. No real rule set other than 1 litre of fuel to be added with a fixed refueling time of 25 seconds. So whether you add the 1 litre in, the 25, the 30 litres, however much you want to add in, it's still going to cost you 25 seconds, and tyres being an additional 5. I think a lot of people today, Joe, will elect for that track position rather than the fresh set of Pirellis.
Which means that they are going to try to stretch those stints as we've got a race replay. This is of a moment between Kerrigan, Armstrong, and I believe that's Varga as well. And Armstrong just muscling her way through to take P13. They're still fighting away as this is Kerrigan on the inside line on Les Stevenson as they head out of the final corner. Who comes out on top? It's going to be Kerrigan, who takes P15. Actually, that was Varga that he was fighting with. Varga, who could come under pressure from Schultz into turn 1. They're going to head down the hill Schultz is going to shape up a move, but so is Varga. So is Filmulter, who comes to the inside line. Rudy Filmulter trying to send that move in and doesn't quite pull it off. But it is just action-packed down here in the battle for about P13. But don't stop watching it. Keep your eyes open because all of these moves could be made. But you're absolutely right about the battle between the top two. But don't forget as well, Andy Boardman, he's in P4 with the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. So he has a pretty quick Ginetta around him as well.
Yeah, Boardman relatively quick in his own right. I mean, normally we see him on pole, and there's contact between Filmulter and Varga heading into the top of the hill. Ginetta's scrambled to try and get around and come out the other side safely. Varga's in the middle of the road, not really knowing where to go. Kevin Boss now elbows out through the chicane. Varga shortcuts over the curbing, probably a bit of a sensible move to try and find that kind of gap in the traffic, and that's the only problem. Once you get muscled out of the train, it's then very hard to get yourself back in to where you were. Let's have a race replay towards the top of the hill, turn number 5. It was Filmulter into the quarter. John Schultzer turns away from the corner. That of course brings Evan Toth into the mix as well in that number 78 Kellogg's car, and everybody kind of scattering for position, trying to avoid a Ginetta broadside on the apex. And I think doing very well, because that could have come out a lot worse, as we saw last week at Brands Hatch with a spinning car. It was calamity at Paddock Hill. We mentioned earlier the stewards. They're just across the way from us up here in the booth, and they've been frantically writing down a lot of the events this race. However, good news is, Joseph, a lot of it is just minor contact. The only thing we have that stands out is lap 1, turn 6 to 7, involving the 62, the 975, the 78 and the 46. So this kind of mid-pack area, it's a warning for the car number 62 for avoidable contact, and that's it. That's Miguel Martins down in P21, as we see Varga just offline again, coming through turn number 2. I'm not sure if it's all going too well right now for the number 508 car. It could be one of those mental games at the moment, Joe, where you've been shoehorned off once and it's happened again in front of Mike Redford into the front of Peter Varga, and it's all gone from bad to worse in less than a lap. Varga turned around once again for the Team Monkey Racing. I was going to say it's very hard to find your confidence with people around you once again not to do the same thing, and just before I can get my words out, Varga turned around out of turn 4.
Yes, and well, that's what happens when there's such an intense fight going on. Sometimes you can be on the receiving end of just a little bit of going over the edge, I think it's fair to say, and Peter Varga there, very unlucky twice, and he's going to try to rebuild his race from P23, but it's going to be a little bit difficult for him to do so, and we will see as the race progresses whether he is able to do just that. We're switching back up with Evan Toth now, who's right on the back of Rudy Filmulter as we head through the final sector. And then, turn number 14, and then the main straight, and then turn number 1 beckons. He's gone a little bit off the circuit just to try and get that traction down heading down into turn number 1. It hasn't been able to do so. It's not quite close enough to make that move, but it's looking slightly murky here, I believe, in Hungary. And could that be that it's cloudy, or could that be that something else is just cooking up? We are a quarter of the way through the race now, and it seems to have settled down a little bit. But the fight at the top is still ready to be on. A second gap between Stevenson and Budowski, another second gap between Budowski and Lindgren, and then just 3 tenths back to Boardman, and another 4 tenths back to Huel. So the top 5, they're so close together. And I think we could be seeing some scraps further up very soon. This is where the strategies are going to come into play. If they do go, as you mentioned, over to the overcut, then they'll be trying to preserve their tyres, as Olivier Kirsten just riding the curb, taking a bit too much off of the chicane, and could come under pressure from Shipston behind. That is the battle for P10 at the moment. Kirsten himself not too far off Urs in front of him, but he was much closer. He was about 8/10 closer in the last sector, and now he actually drops out of that 1 second range. And now he's going to come under pressure from Shipston.
Yeah, Shipston, a very fast driver in his own right. Started off British Masters, I think, in the silver category. Dominating performance there, moved up to the pro category in the next few categorized races that we did run on Mondays, and been with us since. So Shipston, a bit of an RCI regular at this point, and Yao Manzo in our YouTube chat cheering on Tom Shipston. And it's weird to see one RPMS car on a Monday. Normally we've got 4 or 5. They're quite kind of affluent, like the Sim Brothers racing entries. We normally see 4 or 5 of them. RPMS, Sim Brothers, all of them duking it out together. No real team orders, and everybody just here for a good time. So Tom Shipston, the only one with us this week. However, RPMS, if you're listening or watching back, this is my call to you to get a few more cars on the circuit, and fingers crossed we can see that iconic turquoise livery later on in the season. Callum Kerwin also in our YouTube chat. An early pit for Clean Air could be a strat. That's probably a good call right now. Once the pit window opens, we've got about 1:50 before that opens, so probably another lap at least for your race leaders, and then they can start diving down the pit lane and figuring out where they want to be. I mean, I think if you're in this mid to late pack, Joe, it's probably a good shout to pull yourself in for some Clean Air. But, you know, if you're out front, if you're like the number 71 Ammo Plata right now in a bit of no man's land, half a second to the car ahead, you've got kind of 3 seconds to the car behind, you're going to want to preserve that track position as much as possible. And Lily Armstrong chomping at the bit of Peter Lundqvist through this lap. You can see how close they got there out of turn 11, the run down to turn 12. I don't think Armstrong is close enough, although plonks the car on the inside nonetheless, and Lundqvist giving up that space rather easily, if I do say so myself. Didn't look like much fight, because of course the outside becomes the inside for 13, which then becomes the outside again for 14. So Lundqvist could have easily defended that if he wanted to, but I think the 999 thinking of the bigger picture once again, and that's the key thing. We say it all the time during endurance racing: choose your fights, but equally in these one make series, it's almost a very wise piece of advice as well, because looming just behind, you can see in the background there, Les Stevenson and Callum Kerrigan are fast approaching.
Yeah, and I mean, there is battles now that have been starting to go on. So the battle for P3 lit up on the last lap. Andy Boardman making his way through, and this battle could light up in P14, but Stevenson just holding on ahead of Kerrigan for now. But Boardman making his way past Lindgren, and I believe they were side by side as they went into turn number 1. The battle between 3rd, 4th and 5th is oh so close, but they have now dropped 2/10 to Podolski and Stevens, the 2 race leaders, or Stevenson even. This is the other Stevenson, ahead of Callum Kerrigan in that battle for P14. I'd say he's just out of range of P13, just out of range of Lundqvist ahead of him for that 13th spot. But these fights are beginning, and the pit window has now opened. So if you are going to pit for a very early undercut, now is the time.
Yeah, now would be the perfect time indeed. As soon as the pit window has opened, dive on in, chuck the fuel in, and get back out underway, preferably in some Clean Air if possible. Race leaders going by once again, and if I know these two rather well, they'll stretch their stint all the way to the end of the pit window, so we won't see them in until 20 minutes to go. We'll see Stevenson and Badowski down the lane. They'll chuck the minimal amount of fuel in to get to the end, and off they shall go again, because why surrender the lead when you're this far clear at the moment? And a few more stewards reports coming through again. Lots of racing incident, minor contacts. We've got one for racing incident for hard racing. We've got a warning for lap 6, turn 9. That's involving the 28 and the 508. It was a warning for the number 28 for avoidable contact. We then got another racing incident before we see our first time penalty of the race. It was for lap 7, turn 6, involving the 508 and the 975. You'll remember that was Peter Varga on Rudy Filmalter, just where we are now, actually heading into turn 5. It's a 5 seconds for Rudy Filmalter for avoidable contact, and that will be added on to his pit stop time. So he takes the minimum pit stop, 25 seconds. He'll be held for the additional 5, which should offset him in track position versus everybody else. And anybody picking up penalties after the pit stops have been served, they will be added on to their final race time. So again, it's key to keep an eye on the gaps to see who will lose once they cross the line for the checkered flag. Meanwhile, towards the front, it's still Will Stevenson out front from Marco Badowski. The gap is ebbing and flowing as we head through the sectors. 1.6 seconds back to Andy Boardman in the number 69 Greased Weasel racing car. He's got through Christian Lindgren at some point during this race, and now Raphael Huell in the number 21 is chewing at the back end of the number 33 Ginetta. And despite putting in the mammoth stint in the Saturday's RSS Endurance Series of 6 hours at Sebring in iRacing in a GT3 car as well, nonetheless, we find him back again on Mondays as he comes down the pit lane to serve his mandatory stop. He'll be the first car on the road, Joe, to actually make his mandatory stop, and the second car in the whole server, Schaefer, down in P25, the only other car to come down the lane so far. So it's a bit odd to see a pit stop so early on. Tom Shipston following suit as well. Maybe they've fueled a little bit shorter in this opening stint just to try and get track position, keep the car's weight down slightly, and try and get some faster lap times while these tyres are a bit fresher.
Yeah, and early on in the stint, I noticed at least that Huell just seemed to have a bit more flexibility in the car, so I think he might have been going for this strategy from minute 1 rather than spotting that he lost out and deciding to switch. So I think it was premeditated from Raphael Huell that he was going to be the first one to pit or the second one to pit in the end, but the first one of the leaders to come in to the pits. When the pit window indeed did open, we will see where Huell comes out. After he comes out of the pits, I believe it's going to be around E19. Shipston as well coming out of the pits. He will, well, they'll drop a little bit further. We will see where they end up coming down. They'll be at least ahead of Schaefer in 25th. Who will also come into the pits. Redford has just come in as well, and I believe we've got some more penalties to bring.
We do indeed. Stuart's passing us a few more slips of paper. We got a few more racing incidents, avoidable contacts, minor contacts, etc. We've now got the second time penalty, as you said, the number 508 and the 62. It's a 10 seconds for the number 62. That was deemed avoidable contact. Miguel Martins on Peter Varga. If you remember, just a lap after he'd already been turned around once, he went round again, not far off the same place he did before, to be fair, so very unlucky there. Badowski down the lane, 35 minutes on the race timer. Again, it signifies maybe fueled a little bit less at the beginning, going to go a bit heavier towards the end. With him brings Ted Ers and John Schultzer also down the lane. Miguel Martins follows suit. He'll have an elongated pit stop thanks to that 10-second penalty. So Will Stevenson now has a bit of breathing room at the front. He hasn't got to watch his mirrors for the Team Monkey racing car. He's only got to keep an eye on Andy Boardman, who has closed up a little bit in the first sector already. The gap was around 1.6 seconds, already down to a second. So keep your eye on the championship leader, Andy Boardman, in the Greased Weasel Racing entry. Christian Lindgren dropping off 2 seconds just behind these guys. And Emo Plata truly now in the John Dalton zone, where you're too fast for the guy behind you, but you're too slow for the car ahead of you. So you sit in this nice, comfortable piece of no man's land. Here it is, the number 71, as he navigates through Sector 2. Nobody around him, Joe. This is perfect positioning if you want a nice chilled Monday evening.
Yeah, and I mean, with the scrapping earlier on, he's probably happy to just sit there with quite large gaps between himself and anybody else, and he can now try to extend this stint as long as he possibly can, try to freshen himself up for that final one with 6-second gap instead of what's behind, and a 6-second up to Lindgren, as I believe that is Stevenson, who may have just come into the pits. Indeed it is. Will Stevenson, the number 108, comes into the pits, and Andy Boardman takes the lead of this Hungarian race, round 2 of the Ginetta Cup. And Stevenson, Lindgren, both coming into the pits, and I believe everybody actually has looked at that undercut. Quite a few of them have actually gone for it, and it's very interesting to see Boardman the only one of the leading pack to continue on, with Plate 6 seconds off of him at the top. And we will see where they come out in relation to the likes of Fuel, and Badowski, who've had 1 lap or 2 to push on their tyres and to push with their fuel as they came out of the pit lane. Of course, there's only 12 minutes left of the pit window. We're about halfway through, so this is about prime time for them to come in to those pits. And we'll see where Stevenson, who has led this race for so long, we'll see where he ends up coming out in relation to the man that he's been fighting, Badowski, who currently sits in P18, as we see Stevenson and Lindgren and Jackson as well drop down the timing boards. I think we might be seeing Stevenson just out behind, I think, Raphael Fuel is where I would, or maybe not quite behind Raphael Fuel. That's where I would verdict it. I think he'll come out in about P19, but the waiting game is on now as they come out of those pits.
Yeah, of course, the ACC timing board taking a little while to update itself, as of course always does after the pit stops. Badowski first on the road at the moment of those that have completed their mandatory pit stop, and if I'm judging that sector time, it's 3.8 seconds, so it's a very good margin for Badowski. Sounds like he called the pit stop just about right. Looking down at the pit stop timer though, Badowski 1 minute 7. This measures roughly from pit in to pit out versus Will Stevenson 1 minute 10.8. So Will has lost 3.8 seconds in that stop, and that's precisely what the gap was through the first timing gate. It's now up to 4.2 seconds. Of course, the cars come down pit lane, they stop, the tyre temperature drops out ever so slightly, cars get fired back out underway again, tyres begin to heat up naturally as they would. So Badowski pitting first, his tyres are going to be hotter, which again enables him to try and pull a little bit more of a gap on Stevenson in these early stages. So Badowski at the moment, fastest car down pit lane, 1 minute 7. Slowest car being Aaron Jackson, 1 minute 13.2. Actually, take that back. John Schultzer at 1:15 flat, and Miguel Martins with a 1:26. I can only assume is going to be for some kind of damage repair after the tussle earlier on. On your screen at the moment, though, Callum Kerrigan in Sector 1, certainly more confident than Les Stevenson. However, Les pulling out the gap as they head through Sector 2. So, bit of a tit for tat. Callum being very greedy on the inside curbs there. Got to be careful of track limits. I'm rather surprised we haven't seen our first drive-through penalty yet. We're halfway through the race, Joseph. Of course, anything can happen in these later stages, but if I was anyone on the grid right now, I'd be banking those track cut penalties for the end of the race. When you think you might need one, you might need that extra bit of curb just to get around your rival. You can certainly start abusing them in the late game, as Andy Boardman now comes down the pit lane. Race leader has Blunk. We'll have to see where he comes out in relation to Marco Badowski and, of course, Will Stevenson.
Yeah, Badowski, who holds that net race lead 4 seconds ahead of Will Stevenson in 12th and 13th, but what will be first and second when everybody comes out of the pits, because of course taking the longest stint, going longer on your first stint, that is, means that you will lose that track position, even if you have those better tyres and maybe less fuel in the car at the start of your stint at the very least. But yeah, Stevenson 3.9 seconds now off of Badowski, but that gap is closing in. And I think we could be seeing those two fights within the next few laps. Boardman was in the race lead. It's now been inherited by Emo Plate. And Boardman, I think, will drop down quite a chunk down the field, maybe in and around where Raphael Huell is in a net P4, P5 odd with Chris Lindgren and Huell ready to fight each other. They're very, very close on the circuit. We've got quite a few battles that are ready to happen as Andy Boardman comes out of the pits in P10. So he comes out in, well, he's just come out behind Will Stevenson. So maybe the overcut working wonders for Andy Boardman there, as I thought he was going to come out about 2 seconds further back than where he did. But P3 net is where Andy Boardman comes out. And now he has the opportunity with the freshest tyres of the lot to try to push, to maybe try to pressure Stevenson, who's 0.9 seconds up the road, and then maybe try to close that gap to Badowski.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned about the tyres for Boardman. 1 minute 12 from pit in to pit out versus Marco Badowski of a 1 minute 7. Boardman usually quite well rehearsed, quite quick in the pit stops. Plus 5 seconds on Badowski's time. Has Boardman taken a fresh set of boots? And if he has, he's done it at the halfway point, which is going to be very, very good come the end of the race. Of course, everybody's going to be on some absolutely destroyed Pirelli tyres, and Boardman's going to be on half the life expectancy of them. So he's going to have much more grip available to him in the late stages. Keep your eye on Andy Boardman's car. Meanwhile, Tom Shipston finds himself with the stuff of nightmares in that rearview mirror. It's an absolutely terrifying face. Everybody in the community hates it when we run Ginetta Cup because this livery always turns up somewhere, or someone always puts this face on the front of the car, or Ted Ayres always brings back this car. And for a third season, he's done it again. And, you know, if you were driving this, Joe, you looked in your mirror and you saw that, I think that's enough to make you just move out of the way, let alone headlights, let alone flashes. It's just the stuff of nightmares.
Absolutely, it is. It is. It's just. It's one of those where it attracts your eyes to looking at that rearview mirror, and it can just put you off your game. And now, just going to try to exercise that as they head down the main straight. He's closing in on Shipston, pulling to the inside, hoping for a mistake from Shipston, but it's not. He's going to have to do it the hard way. Shipston gives him a right old squeeze, and then runs off the circuit. He was too focused on Ted Ayres. And now they are side by side as they head down to turn number 2. Who's going to be later on the brakes? Is it going to be Ayres on the outside, or is it going to be Shipston on the inside? It is going to be Shipston, who holds on to P14 for now. Ted Ayres will continue to pressure. Shipston will continue to look in that rearview mirror with maybe some nerves, whereas Ayres has shown that he's going to show no mercy and no fear as well, trying to shape up that inside line move. As well, we'll see as Ted Edwards comes into these pits.
Yeah, we'll see indeed if the terrifying face of Ted Ayres is enough to put Tom Shipston off his stride in this late game. A couple more pitters, as you said, Ted Edwards being one of them for Race Ventura. He comes in from a provisional P2, and Les Stevenson also down the lane. That leaves a handful of cars left to pit so far. Olivier Curtin inherits the race lead naturally, and of course that will dissipate once he comes down and makes his stop. Andy Boardman, though, all over the back of Will Stevenson. We're waiting for those kind of fresher, speculating fresher Pirelli tyres for Boardman to phase in at this point. And just last time by, 152.9 for Boardman, a 153.4 for Will Stevenson. So certainly the fresher tyres prevailing. You can see the traction that Boardman gets out of turn 1 compared to Stevenson. He's going to be on the wrong side for 2, but if he can keep it around the outside, it will become the inside for 3, and that makes it very awkward for Stevenson to hit his braking point. He's overshot ever so slightly the switchback nature of the circuit. Stevenson now on the inside. Boardman just about gets ahead by the apex of turn 3, and Andy Boardman inherits another position, and crucially, Joe puts himself into some clean air to really get those Pirelli tyres working towards the end.
Yeah, and he's showing more pace at the moment than was being shown by Stevenson. And, well, he was actually on that last lap 2 tenths quicker and almost snatched the fastest lap away from Lindgren, and well, not even 2 tenths actually, 5 tenths quicker on that previous lap, and almost snatched that fastest lap off of Lindgren. It is at the moment a 52.905. He set a 52.990. So the pace shown by Andy Boardman at the moment is something to admire. And Badowski, who's gone a little bit slower on the last lap, possibly fuel saving to try to make sure that he gets to the end. He will now be looking in his rearview mirrors at Andy Boardman, who's 3.5 seconds down at the road behind. Speaking of Lindgren, we've got Raphael Huell right on the rear of the man, fighting for 8th place at the moment. They will head down the main straight, and Huell will try to take advantage of the slipstream effect, as Lindgren not too far off Will Stevenson now, so we could be seeing a return to the battle for the top positions for Lindgren and Huell. They're going to stay in those positions for the time being, as Lindgren just trying to close to within a second. He's just outside on Stevenson, who's lost a lot of time to Andy Boardman on that last lap, and that gap is now stretched up to a second. So Boardman showing supreme pace over the rest of the field at the moment, the quickest man on circuit over the last lap or so, and he's going to try to take that momentum to the next 20 odd minutes.
Yeah, Andy Boardman, of course, on the freshest tyres, looking to take away that fastest lap, and it isn't in vain. We do offer a bonus 3 points for the fastest lap of the race, and a bonus 4 points for pole position as well. So being fast is very crucial, because it does get you those all-important points, and sometimes championships are won and lost by just a handful of points. And you think, you know, if I had the fastest lap at round 2, I poled it in 4, we would have won, no issues at all. So every point matters in these early stages. Rudy Filmalter onto the back of John Schulze in the number 2. Rudy, of course, serving his time penalty in the pit stop, has offset him ever so slightly as to where we'd expect him to be, a little bit further up. As your top 2 now come down the pit lane, top 3 even make that, as the pit stop, the pit window is going to close in a minute and a half. So Olivia Curtin, Peter Lundqvist and Callum Kerrigan all come down the pit lane to take their stop. And Rudy Filmalter very cautious through the chicane there. You can see the gap that John Schulze has opened up through 6 and 7. Kind of suggests that Rudy might be on a few track limit warnings by now, and he's just trying to avoid that kind of final nail in the coffin that will, of course, net him a drive-through penalty. Stewards being relatively quiet recently. The last report we have is lap 13, turn 1A, which is the kink between 1 and 2, should we say. It was a 5 seconds for the car 508, was avoidable contact with the number 7. So Peter Varga getting his elbows out between turns 1 and 2. And meanwhile, Will Stevenson, the cork in the bottle this time, himself, Christian Lindgren and Raphael Huell being brought into the train this time by. And Will Stevenson really struggling at the moment. Last time by a 153.1. Raphael, 153.9 for Will Stevenson. Christian Lindgren a 153.1 and Raphael Huell a 152.9. So Stevenson certainly struggling at the moment. Beginning to think that Lindgren and Huell are on fresh tyres as well, because again, comparing the pit stop times, Badowski being a 1 minute 7, we'll take that as a kind of no tyres run. Andy Boardman 1 minute 12, certainly a very fast car on the circuit, the fastest car on the circuit at the moment with the fastest lap to his name, 52.6. We then got Will Stevenson running 53.9s, but then Lindgren and Huell running low 53s into the 52s. Kind of suggests that either Stevenson has destroyed his Pirellis in the first 40 minutes of this race, or everybody around him has taken tyres, and Will Stevenson hasn't realised the power of those additional 5 seconds in the lane actually saves you quite a bit on the circuit. I mean, you've only got to have 6 laps a second quicker than the guy ahead of you, and those tyres have already paid off as we see the slipstream train beginning to run towards turn 1. Stevenson covering off the inside, running all the way up to the pit wall. Lindgren's going to have to go the long way around, and Raphael Huell in the background nearly gets a bumper full of Lindgren as the hip and shoulder becomes, and two cars collide coming through 1A. Both drivers saved it, kept it out of the wall somehow, Joe. Christian Lindgren and Raphael Huell live to fight another day, and the only frustrating thing with the Ginetta is how slow those headlights flash, because you can't express your frustration to the driver ahead of you. But let's catch a race replay. Coming down into 1, Stevenson on the defensive. Lindgren tries to go the long way around. There's a hip and shoulder. Huell gets underneath Lindgren, which I don't think he realizes, as he comes back over through 1A to try and cover off the kind of outside line or pinch Huell towards the edge of the circuit. Two cars collide, somehow keeping each other out of the wall, and they still haven't lost touch of Will Stevenson. They are still closer than ever, Joe, at the moment. So Stevenson really struggling in these late stages.
Yeah, and he's going to have to put up a stout defence if he wants to hold on to that final podium position. As well, he was looking so good early on, but after the pit stops, he's just not been able to kick on like he did earlier on, and now he comes under pressure from the drivers in 4th and 5th. Lindgren, who had his fastest lap snatched off of him by Andy Boardman, who took the fastest lap with a 52.8 on that previous circuit round. And, well, it's impressive pace from Boardman, but not so impressive from Stevenson. And Lindgren now stuck behind Stevenson, can't make any inroads and snatch that fastest lap back. He's going to try once again down the main straight as Huell so slippery on the exit, so he will not be pressuring Lindgren, and it's just the outside line now taken by the number 33. It's rinse and repeat attempted from Lindgren, maybe even trying to tuck inside for a switch back. Stevenson holds on, and Lindgren just doesn't get the traction that he would have wanted. He tucks back in. Huell finds himself right back in this battle, and you've got a 3-car fight for this final podium spot. Lindgren trying maybe to look to the inside. Stevenson so slows through turn number 2. But once again, another lap and another position held for Stevenson, who just manages once again to defend that 3rd place.
Some very good driving there. Again, rinse and repeat. As you say, Huell outbraking himself into turn 5, sailing wide. He'll drop off the back of these two. Won't be close enough if Lindgren gets the door open to follow through. And it does seem like Stevenson is really struggling at the moment compared to Lindgren's car. Looks so much easier to drive the Sim Brothers number 33 entry. Eagle-eyed viewers would have noticed just then Callum Kerrigan netting his first drive-through penalty of the race, the first drive-through penalty of the race, in fact, and it wasn't for our stewards. Stewards no longer give out drive-through penalties, so that was for an in-game track cut, so too many times outside of track limits for Callum Kerrigan. Through the pit lane he will go, and back out once again with considerable time loss as Will Stevenson navigates through turn 13 once again towards 14. Lindgren knows he's got good pace here. Huell's going to try and set himself up, takes the wider line into 14 to try and get a better run off the corner, down the start finish straight. Lindgren, of course, well within slipstream range. Huell is there. It's about 0.6 within ACC. Huell is half a second off, so he's just within range. Lindgren jinks left, jinks right, tries to outbrake Stevenson down the inside once again. He's only going to hamper his run out of turn 1 as Raphael Huell begins to close up through 1A once again. No side-by-side action this time. No contact is made, and down into 2 they will go. And Lindgren looks definitely a lot more confident on the brakes than Stevenson does, and he's got to keep this up now for 15 minutes more, has Will Stevenson. And all the meanwhile, Andy Boardman able to escape up the road. He's 0.7 off the back of Badowski as well, so that could be another fight soon to be forming. Looking at the last few laps, Boardman has been quicker than Badowski, so again this could come down towards the line, and we know Badowski is on old tyres, Boardman on fresher tyres, we're speculating, so again it could be another fight down to the wire. We've got a couple of duels on screen right now, Ted Urs and Aaron Jackson, and then in the background, Lily Armstrong still fending off Tom Shipston. Despite all the pit stops and everything that has happened, Armstrong still ahead of Shipston, and that's a very good achievement in its own. Tom Shipston rather quick when he gets settled in a car, so kudos to Lily Armstrong on that one. Although just under 14 minutes to go, Joe, we've seen the first track limit drive-through. Are we going to see another? Because of course up here we don't know who is on how many warnings by this point, and I can probably predict quite a few of these drivers are going to be teetering on one of their last warnings, if not their very last warnings.
Yes, it's going to be crunch time, as it's very much crunch time for Badowski to try to keep that race lead. Andy Boardman has gotten to within half a second of taking that lead, and the momentum would suggest that Boardman takes the victory. And well, we'll see with just under a quarter of the race to go whether Andy Boardman is able to snatch this one away, as Badowski was just able to take this one so far, take the battle so deep, and he will continue as Stevenson makes his way past Lindgren. They are Stevenson, Hull, Huell and Lindgren fighting once again for third, fourth and fifth. But this is the battle for those two more important positions, the two most important positions in this race, and that is P number 1 and P number 2. Badowski, who has not raced so far this campaign. Of course, we've only had one race, as Huell has made his way past Lindgren, and these three are going to continue to scrap away, most likely all the way to the end of this race. And at the moment, Stevenson still holding that P3, but only just. And he's going to hope that Huell and Lindgren do fight with each other, and will just scrap over that fourth and fifth, which will allow him just that little bit of momentum, as they actually went 3 wide. In 2, I believe that's turn number 2. Huell, who had that track position but outbraked himself and let Stevenson back through. They are both so desperate to get past Stevenson, and they'll try once again down the main straight to gain that momentum and enough momentum to take that back, or to take that final podium position back. It's a poor exit from Huell, which means Lindgren is going to fight for P number 4 on the exit and heading into turn number 1. He pulls out of the slipstream, pulls to the inside line. Huell is going to hold on to the outside racing line, and is Lindgren still going to try it? Yes, he is. He's going to chance it. There's contact between the two, a little bit of tyre to tyre, but Lindgren just staying behind, not wanting any further incident, and certainly not wanting to spin Huell around, and he maintains that P5.
Yeah, maintaining the P5. I'm wondering if Lindgren has let Huell through to see if he can have a crack at Stevenson and achieve what, Lindgren struggled for lap after lap to do. It could be a very sensible thing. Meanwhile, Boardman just about pokes his nose towards the inside of Badowski into turn 5. It's going to be the inside to the outside swap around once again as they head through turn 6 and 7. I think Badowski gifted Boardman that position, saw him come in, didn't want to make any contact, didn't want to have to straight line the chicane, which could mean Badowski is on one of his last track limit warnings potentially. Andy Boardman now through into your race lead. He is free to gallop away on those fresh tyres now, although probably harmed somewhat by the dirty air from Marco Badowski, already pulling out 0.6 of a second in just over a sector. In theory, Boardman should be good to go towards the end now. We're 10 minutes away from the checkered flag dropping. There's still fights on the circuit, not decided yet, one of which being Olivier Curtin and Ted Edwards. Kraken Engineering versus Race Ventura as they head down into turn number 12. Not close enough to fire one up the inside, although I have seen some questionable sends sometimes from Ted Edwards, so fingers crossed he's got that dialed back today, because the live stewards will be watching you, Ted. Be very careful on what you attempt to do on Olivier Curtin. But the Race Ventura car certainly looking rather quick at the moment. We've got lots more racing incidents coming on through at the moment. A few between the 108 and the 33. That's Lindgren and Stevenson. The 33 and the 21. That's again Huell and Lindgren. We've got one between the 108 and the 21 twice over. That was turn 1A and turn 2. So successive corners going on there. That was for lap 25, and they're all marked as racing incident, minor contacts, or racing incident, hard racing. And I think one of the ones being where we saw Huell and Lindgren nearly, put themselves both out of the race, as Mike Redford makes up a late move in the race under the inside of Les Stevenson through turn 1. The MYK racing car shall go up into P15, free to try and get to the back of Evan Toth ahead, although 4.5 seconds in 8.5 minutes. That's going to be a pretty big ask for Mike Redford to do, Joe.
Is going to be a pretty steep task, and I think it's unlikely that he'll be able to bridge that gap. P15 in the end for Redford. Not a bad result, but this battle for P3 now rages on, and I don't know if you can see there, drive-through penalties have been applied for both Huell and Lindgren, and that pretty much seals P3 for the hard defending Stevenson, and they are going to have to serve those in the next couple of laps. Huell comes riding that line, but he does indeed come in the end. So does Lindgren, and that is the end of the battle for P3, which allows the drivers who've been in the Dalton zone, Plate and Edwards, to just climb up. Edwards, who's actually made his way past Curtin, so maybe not quite yet at that stage, but Emo Plate, who's been there pretty much the entire race, will be promoted up to P4, and Huell and Lindgren are going to try to recover any scraps that they possibly can. Speaking of scraps, Varga, who got caught in quite a few early on, he is fighting Miguel Martin for this P20, and he's going to defend for the time being, hoping that he's going to have a much cleaner incident, or not a much cleaner incident, a much cleaner incident-free battle between himself and the number 62. They will head round to the final corner, turn number 14, and then we'll head down the main straight. Martin will try to pick up that slipstream as Huell comes out of the pits, I believe, or is on his way out of the pits at the very least. Yes, he is indeed, and he comes out in P11 with Lindgren coming out in P12. They are both ahead of Lundqvist, and there is a 2-second gap between themselves and Shipston. So the game is on now for Huell and Lindgren to try to close that gap. They've had the pace so far this race to do just that, and now they're going to try and recover any scraps they can from this one. I believe 8th place will be the peak of where they can get to, but they're gonna lock in now.
Yeah, absolutely so. And I mean, you know, they're going to be kicking themselves, aren't they? Huell and Lindgren picking up that final track limit penalty. That was enough to drag them down the pit lane for a drive-through. Will Stevenson having a massive sigh of relief that he hasn't got to put up the defences anymore, making that Ginetta as wide as possible. Boardman still, though, not able to pull away from Badowski. 0.8 of a second separates the two leaders. Will Stevenson slightly back down the order, 7.5 seconds nearly to the good. Emo Plata, of course, big gainer in the late stages in the number 71, loomed in the John Dalton zone for the majority of the race, where he's too fast for the guy behind, too slow for the guy ahead, and in these dying stages has picked up 2 positions thanks to the drive-through penalty system. Of course, Ted Edwards sneaks into P5. Olivier Curtin, not far behind him, draws up as well. Tedders, Jackson, Armstrong and Shipston all gaining positions out of those drive-through penalties, and it's so costly here at the Hungaroring. It's about 37 seconds from pit in to pit out, so for the sake of gaining 0.2 here and there, being a bit greedy on track limits in the bigger picture of the 1 hour race, is it really worth it? I'm not too sure, because I'm doing all those hard-earned points in the blink of an eye at Raphael Huell and Christian Lindgren. So fingers crossed everybody else makes it towards the end of the race, although Olivier Curtin being very greedy on track limits there as well. It's a very cautious game in these late stages. Just under 5 minutes to go. We did mention earlier on before we got underway about our partners. They've been revolving round in the bottom left-hand side of your screen. Ready, Set, Sim. Of course, they're a title sponsor for our iRacing League on Saturdays. That was just last week. Their mission is to simplify sim racing by providing a comprehensive and personalized experience, whether you're a novice looking to get started or an experienced racer seeking to optimize your setup. Be sure to check out their website and their very handy sim rig builder, which I did have a play on just last week, and it is very, very informative indeed, as we see Peter Varga going toe-to-toe with Miguel Martins. I think that was into turn number 1, and we had a bit of a contact there, although Varga certainly came off better, and he now prevails a second to the good as they head through the middle sector of the lap. Coach Dave Delta, faster lap times start with Delta, a setup and data analysis app for iRacing, ACC, Le Mans Ultimate, and even Gran Turismo 7, which still blows my mind that you can get telemetry in and out of Gran Turismo 7. Available in 9 languages, giving you access to setups, racing lines, and data analysis. Why not stay ahead of your rivals with Delta? They could possibly even teach you the track limits of Hungaroring, as some of our drivers might need to learn tonight. Green Man Gaming, where you can buy games and game keys with Green Man Gaming. Get the best prices and awesome bundles and exclusive game deals daily. And I believe they had a rather nice offer on Monster Hunter when that came out just last week as well. IMB Racewear, who you might be familiar with from our community series, providing fully custom designs to allow sim racers and real-life racers to make the impact they've always wanted in their merchandise. From gloves to socks to jackets, you can be sure that every piece is crafted with precision and style, giving racers the confidence to stand out both on and off track. Moser Racing, who need no introduction, partnered with us last year, as we see a bit of a fight here between Filmalter and Schultzer, and Rudy Filmalter finally gaining the place over Schultzer. He's been looking at the back end of the number 2 for a considerable amount of time now as they navigate through the middle sector. But Moser Racing, thrilled to partner with those guys, a leader in high-quality sim racing gear. They have everything these days to boost your racing experience, even your simulator experience, branching out into the kind of truck sim world as well with some of their products. And lastly, but no means least, of course, Motorsport UK Esports, where we're a recommended community, and that's a pretty prestigious thing. I think, given the amount of racing communities we have these days, Joe, of course, it's not just us. It's a big old world out there, and there's a lot of communities doing this, and it's great that we're recognised by Motorsport UK. And I think a lot of their members coming over for the iRacing Champ on Saturday that we held at Sebring.
Yeah, and well, I think we had a pretty good race considering for Sebring, of course, previewing the 12 hours of Sebring that will be coming next week, and just getting a little taster of what that circuit is like, and it threw up a decent chunk of action throughout. Of course, I took the last couple of hours with Jesse Lee, who currently does not sit in the comms box, but it was a good one. And speaking of Jesse Lee, if you want to join us tomorrow for the Le Mans Ultimate, as Miguel Martin and Varga having a little bit of contact, a little bit of argy-bargy, and Martin making his way through into P20, and Varga trying to fight it back on the inside line. They are side by side, and who's going to come out on top in this battle? It might even be Callum Kerrigan, but no, it is going to be Martin on the exit, but running wide. Varga pulls alongside, and I think eventually this battle is going to be won by the number 508. Martin trying to take that inside line, maybe trying to cut that curve just a little bit, and it has allowed him the momentum, but doesn't allow him the position. A switchback could be on, but just too much curbing taken, and Varga stealing that position back. They're still going to fight though into the chicane, as that is really late braking from the number 62. More contact between the two as the checkered flag is now waved, and we're still watching on with this battle, still raging on through the final couple of sectors as Martin now finally tries to seal P20, but Varga on the inside line, just giving him a right old squeeze once again. I'm sure this one is going to be decided by the stewards. Callum Kerrigan getting involved in this one as well to the inside, just taking advantage of Varga's broken momentum. And through goes Kerrigan. He's up now into P21. Varga having more contact with drivers. He has not had the cleanest day, whether it's his fault or other people's, and he ends up actually coming into the pits and presumably with some damage. But that fight was feisty, and in the end it was chopped by Miguel Martin.
Yeah, very feisty indeed, and the Portuguese driver prevailing in that fight there. Varga down the pit lane, not sure why, maybe not enough fuel, miscalculated by a lap. It's easy to do. Mike Redford also down the lane for some reason, but Andy Boardman, the man on your screen at the moment, not the best qualifying that we've seen from him so far this season. However, a very stellar race. Some great racecraft has come out of the Greased Weasel Racing, number 69 entry, and he goes 2 for 2 in the Ginetta Cup Season 3 with Marco Badowski in tow for the Team Monkey Racing entry. Will Stevenson fending off a charging grid behind him. He takes the bottom step of the podium. And Emo Plata just outside of the podium place, P4. That was a very unexpected drive there with some late penalties, gifting a lot of positions. Ted Edwards there up into P5. He's going to be very glad after the dreadful round one he had at Brands Hatch. Olivier Curtin and Ted Ers come through in very quick succession. It's Lily Armstrong prevailing over Jackson, over Shipston. Huell and Lindgren just in the background as well. Those two drivers, they're going to be kicking themselves on those late drive-through penalties. Evan Toth across the line, P14 he shall go, and then we've got a bit of a gap back before we see Les Stevenson and Rudy Filmalter, good friends in real life and outside of the racing circuit. However, gloves off as soon as these one-make series seem to come. And Miguel Martin prevails over Callum Kerrigan towards the line. He'll go, although 5 seconds to Martin in the last dying moments. The number 62 will drop the place to Callum Kerrigan, who's absolutely chomping at the back bumper of the number 62. Martin Schaefer comes through P21, followed by Gianni Lenz in P22, De Jong in P23, and then Redford. MYK Racing, the number 95, does make it towards the end of the race, however, all the way down in P24. And Peter Varga still circulating, just coming out of turn 11. He shall also finish the race. But the crucial thing here is, Joe, everybody scores that's finished. So top 30 take away points. So the lowest score you could take away as Peter Varga was 6 points. And that's all you might need to prevail over somebody else in the championship standings.
Exactly, with it all being so close. And you could always have somebody like Badowski, who did not race last time out. He will jump up the standings now after taking that P2 home. And, well, it's going to be, I think, a very interesting championship. I think it's going to be very open. And today, with Boardman winning, that will take him up, I believe, to the top of the standings. Stevenson, P2. Nope, Stevenson ended up in P3. A very good drive from him. Badowski in that P2. He will get his first points on the board. And, well, the championship, we're only just getting underway. But we should be in for a good.
Yeah, of course, we're only round 2 tonight. Race results on your screen. Pending any further stewards' inquiries, of course, reports are open after the race as well. But stewards doing a pretty good job on catching everything tonight. There was a few more towards the end of the race. However, again, lots of racing incidents, lots of minor contacts. So no harm, no foul given. And the last penalty, of course, given out to the number 62. Dropped 1 position to Callum Kerrigan. And that, of course, rounds up today at the Hungaroring. Next week, you can find us back in Blighty for round 3 at Alton Park, also known as a bit of a mini Nürburgring with all its elevation changes. That normally elects for some very good close racing in these one-make series. Round 4, we head to the land of Kevin Boss. Boss. That's Zandvoort on the 24th of March before we hop back to Blighty for Snetterton round 5. Again, another circuit that always prevails in some close one-make racing. Before rounding out in Italy on April 7th at Imola. So still plenty of races to go. And if you do fancy a late mid-season sign-up, such as Marco Badowski turning up for round number 2, you can do so by heading on over to the website. That's racerci.com, where you can sign up for all of our events anytime, day or night, whatever takes your fancy on that one. And plenty to get your teeth stuck into, of course. Le Mans Ultimate Friday Multi-Sprint Series. I said they were heading to Spa earlier on. They're not. They're heading to Kota this week. It's the penultimate round, round 7 of 8. Still spaces on that one if you do want to sign up and get involved there. And Le Mans Ultimate, more sign-ups have, or will be opening, should I say, on March 15th. That's for Night Owl Hyper Sprint. So we throw everybody into hypercars for 1 hour of frantic racing. Round 1 kicks off April 5th at Sebring. Of course, sign-ups open March 15th, as I alluded to earlier. Sign-ups still open for Ginetta Cup, so if you do want to get involved in that one, you can do. And, of course, head on over to the website racerci.com. And down below, you can find all of our relevant links, including Discord and all of our social media, as well as links to all of our partners. They've been revolving around in the bottom left-hand side of your screen. Ready, Set, Sim, Coach Dave Delta, Green Man Gaming, IMB Racewear, and Moser Racing as well, as being a recommended community for Motorsport UK esports. And as we catch a few of our race highlights in the background, it was a brilliant race tonight, much closer than what we saw at Brands Hatch just a week ago, Joe.
It was certainly much closer, pretty much up and down the field, because it seemed to split out quite early on at Brands, but here we had no such, well, I was about to say we had no such luck. We had no such issues, and we ended up having a very, very good race, as we get to see now some of the replays and some of the best moments of our circuit around the Hungaroring. And, well, what a race it ended up throwing up. Andy Boardman coming back from not a particularly high grid position to, well, I say that, P4 isn't that bad, but ended up dominating pace-wise in that second stint and taking that victory. Stevenson holding on to that P3, mainly due to the fact that the drivers behind were stumbling over each other and ended up picking up drive-through penalties. But no, take no credit away from Stevenson. He ended up taking that P3 on pace, especially as he was the fastest driver, I would say, in that first stint as well. So, I mean, ebbs and flows for a lot of the drivers, I think, would be a great way to describe it. And in the end, it was the driver who ebbed the highest and ebbed at the right time who took that race victory.
Yeah, absolutely so. And one of the big gainers from the race, as well as Andy Boardman, was Ted Edwards in the Race Ventura Ginetta. Ted, welcome on into the box. Some late penalties meant you got a very, very good final finishing position.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it. It was I wasn't thinking anything was going to come good from this race. I don't like Hungaroring. I've never got on with it. I've always ended up spilling out, having a crash, or like getting track cut penalties, like some of them did. But I only had the one. Can't remember where I got it from. But yeah, it was fun getting those two positions on the start in T1 was, I think, what sealed the deal for me keeping the positions, because overtaking here, even if someone's on older tyres, I think Curtin was and I was on new, it was so hard to get past it. I only got past him because he made a mistake in the chicane.
Yeah, it's all very well kind of catching it. It's getting past that is the tricky bit. I mean, we saw Andy Boardman, I think, on new tyres as well with some blistering pace in the middle sector, managed to take the race lead and kind of maintained a gap to Badowski. Didn't really pull away in the end. So the tyres certainly fell off after a while. Ted, still plenty of rounds left to go. Any particular goal for the season other than just kind of making it out alive from some of these rounds?
I think just do my best and do what I did tonight, which was just sort of relax into it and not having high expectations. Brands Hatch was one of those ones where I qualified well, and I was like, oh, I can do really well here, and then I ended up binning it in the first lap. So tonight it was just, I'll chill out, see what happens. Oh, now I'm P5, and then I started pouring with sweat, heart rate went through the roof. So I think next round, I think we're at Alton, and it's a nighttime race, so that's going to be interesting. I think for that one, I'm just going to chill right out, because we all know it's not the easiest track to overtake on.
Yeah, Alton, some very dark scenes as well. Not really designed for night racing there. Joe, anything you want to ask Ted before we let him go tonight?
Well, I mean, we saw a couple of moments where you could have gone for the custom. You didn't. What was your thinking behind that?
What did you? Sorry, you cut out for me. What was that? I went for there.
Well, you didn't. You didn't go for some customary sends that looked to be shaped up well.
Well, after
Explain
getting
yourself.
my 20-second penalty from round one, I thought, I'll try and be a good boy and try not annoy Phil. So I just chilled out. It was the thing of Curtin's a really good racer. Not saying that I would send it on anyone who's a bad racer, but you don't want to touch someone and then have a spin, because as soon as they have a spin, that's it. Like you're gonna get a penalty. And where I sat was really good. And I know Snoody, but behind Ted Urs, was on the screen now. He had really good pace, and I was like, well, if I start losing time, if I make a problem, get 5 seconds, that's it, that's me out. I will lose all this hard work I've done to get here. So it's playing it safe. People know me to send it into corners on people, and probably not make it all the time, but I've trying to change my ways and trying to be a cleaner driver.
Change Ted Edwards. Who'd have thunk it, huh? Just before we let you go, Ted, anybody you want to say a shout out to or a thank you to?
I want to say thank you to Katrina, because she's always here, and she made the delivery. She edited delivery tonight to change some of the sponsors on it. So that was nice of her, and I love her to bits. I want to say thank you to you guys for doing the commentary and doing the stream, and thank you to the student team who, you know, without them, it'll be a bit more annoying if you ended up in an accident. I would like to say thank you to Coach Dave Delta, because without that software and those setups, I don't think I'd be anywhere in this field.
There you go. You heard it here first. Coach Dave Delta certainly giving Ted a little bit of an edge over his rivals. Ted, thank you very much for dropping in. We're going to let you get off now and enjoy the rest of your evening. And yeah, congratulations on what was P5, I believe.
Thank you.
Ted Edwards there from Race Ventura. And of course, if you do want to get faster lap times, they do start with Coach Dave Delta, as Ted just mentioned. Of course, not forgetting our other partners, Ready Set Sim, Green Man Gaming, IMB Raceware, Moser Racing, and of course Motorsport UK Esports. A big thank you to you guys at home. A big thank you to any other drivers watching live, listening in as they race. I know some of them do. I don't know how they manage it, but somehow they do. Obviously a different breed here at RCI. And if you do want to get involved, head on over to the website. That's racerci.com, and down below you can find all of the relevant links to any of the partners we've just mentioned, and of course all of the links to us here at RCI. Next broadcast will be on Friday. You can join Jesse Lee and Katrina Scott as they take you through the penultimate round of the Le Mans Ultimate Series that we've been hosting at the moment. And you can catch myself and Joseph Black next Monday as we head to round 3 at Alton Park to unleash these cars once again. That's going to be a bit of an exciting one, especially with the added trouble of darkness. So from myself, John Dalton, from Ash Bibby behind the cameras, from Joe Black alongside me, and from all of our live stewards and everybody else here at RCI, we hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, and we hope to see you on Friday when we head to LMU. Take care.
You ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Get behind the wheel, let's go. Grip the road, feel the flow. Thunder roaring, steel alive. Live this dream and drive. Tires burning with gasoline. Push the limits, chasing green. One shot, don't slow. Go on, we'll take control. Engines scream alive tonight. Blazing past the red line. Outrun the night, won't lose this fight. This is who we are. Chasing taillights. Chasing taillights. Chasing taillights. We're chasing taillights. The miles they fade, but they don't die. Faster now, the hours fly by. Sweat and gears, hearts in sync. On the edge, on the brink. Clock ticks down, stakes are high. One mistake, we kiss us goodbye. Don't slow down, we're not done. Finish line for the strong ones. Engines scream alive tonight. Blazing past the red line. Outrun the night, won't lose this fight. Follow the road, red line for show. We're chasing taillights, don't let go. Under the stars, we'll go so far. This is who we are. Chasing taillights. Chasing taillights. Chasing taillights. Chasing taillights. Feel the rush, see the goal. Every second, take control. The world blurs, time won't wait. We rise, we fight, we accelerate. 3, 2, 1, go. Follow the road, red line for show. We're chasing taillights, don't let go. Under the stars, we'll go so far. This is who we are. Chasing taillights. 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 We're chasing taillights. We're always chasing taillights. You ready?